How much money do you need to make a film? If you're gonna make a studio level film in Hollywood, you're probably gonna need at least $5 to $10 million. And if you're trying to make a big blockbuster action movie with CGI and all the bells and whistles, anywhere from 50 to 250 million just to shoot and edit the film is very normal. But a lot of the time, big studios spend more money on their marketing than they actually do to make the film. So they might make a film for 200 million and then spend 250 or 300 million marketing it. But if you're an independent filmmaker like me, spending $200 or $300 million on one film is just not on the table for your next project. So, how much do you really need as an independent filmmaker to get a film made? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. And this isn't going to be based on some statistics or industry averages I got off some website. This is going to be based on what it really takes to make an indie film from someone who's seen good budgets and some really bad budgets too. Now, every film that you're ever going to make is going to be a little bit different, or maybe a lot a bit different. But there's a number of categories that you can account for no matter what kind of film that you're making. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is make a good script breakdown. What you'll do is go through your script and you're going to make a list of all the characters in your film and how many actors you're going to need to play them. You're going to make a list of all the props you're going to need for the film. You're going to make a list of all the locations you need for the film, all the wardrobe you're going to need for the film. You need lists of everything that's going to appear in the film so that you can account for them in your budget. Once you know everything that you've got to get for your film, then you can start the process of actually budgeting. Now, pretty much any film that you're ever going to make, the biggest expense that you're going to have is your cast and crew. So with that said, if you're making a small independent film, not really planning on making a lot of money, and you're not treating this as a big financial investment where you're trying to get a good ROI on your product, one of the easiest ways to save money and get your film made is to not pay your cast and crew. But if you have any kind of decent budget to make your film, for example, you're going to be spending more than like $20,000 or $30,000 on the project, you need to be paying your cast and crew as a filmmaker. You want to be taking care of people, not taking advantage of them. So while people generally will work for free just to build their credits and build their reel, if you have a budget, you should be paying them. And when people know that you're a low budget production, generally speaking, unless they're really far along in their career where they're only taking on the really big jobs, most people are pretty willing to work for a discounted rate to bring small independent films to life. The number that I've found that generally makes people feel taken care of and not like you're just trying to take advantage of them to make your film without having to totally break the bank paying thousands of dollars for actors and crew members, most people feel pretty taken care of if you're paying them at least $200 to $300 a day. Now, if you live in LA or Atlanta or New York City or somewhere like that, you may have to pay more than this. But generally, in most parts of the world, this is a pretty good rate to be paying your cast and crew for a low budget production. So you have a crew day rate, but how many days will you need to shoot? If you have a 90-page script, which is pretty standard, and you're going to want to be shooting about 5 pages a day, that comes out to about 18 production days, which I feel like is a really good amount of time for a full-length feature film to shoot. You can get it shot in less time, and honestly, most independent productions do shoot their films in something closer to 10 to 14 days. But I really recommend taking those extra couple days if possible, just to ensure that you're going to be able to produce a film with the production value that you expect. Now, I'm going to assume that if you're watching a video like this, you're probably an independent filmmaker who's fully capable of directing the film while also operating the camera, working on the lights, and essentially running the show behind the scenes. With that said, you're probably going to want to have at least 1 or 2 sets of extra hands just to help you move around C-stands, set up the lights, go get lunch, and do other things like that. So I'd budget for at least 2 sets of extra hands. We'll say you're paying them $300 a day for 18 days. Altogether, that's going to come out to about $11,000 for your crew. Now, as far as budgeting for actors, this is going to vary really heavily depending on your script. Ultimately, to figure out exactly what this number is going to be, you're going to have to schedule out your production and figure out how many days each actor is going to be on set, and then multiplying that by your day rate that you'll be paying them. For our purposes here, though, we're just going to assume that you need about 4 actors per day on set. If you have 4 actors per day at 18 days and you pay them $300 a day, that's going to come out to about $22,000. So altogether, from your cast and your crew, you're going to end up spending probably around $33,000. And this is going to be the majority of your budget, but I'm going to go ahead and run through the rest of the important things that you should be thinking about when making your film. Video equipment is a very common area that filmmakers overspend. Often, it's pretty common for people to overspend on their equipment and underspend on their cast and crew. And really, I feel like this is a big mistake. You're going to end up with a much better film if you pay that money to good cast and crew who really know what they're doing, rather than big expensive production production equipment. In my opinion, equipment really is a great way that productions can save money, because if you're a filmmaker, you probably have some video equipment that you can use to be shooting the film. It's also a really good idea to ask your crew what kind of equipment that they have and if they'd be willing to lend it into the production. A lot of people, when they work as crew, myself included, are more than happy to bring their own equipment. And so if you put your camera with your 2 lights, with one of your crew members' microphones and another one's set of C-stands, usually you can piece together a pretty good equipment package without having to spend lots of money. And when you're budgeting for your film, remember, your equipment isn't what makes an incredible film. You, as the filmmaker, are the one who makes an incredible film, no matter what equipment you have to work with. With that said, normally I'd go ahead and budget in $1,000 in case you want to run a special lens for a scene, or in case you need to buy a few extra SD cards or an extra battery or 2. But ultimately, you're going to want to keep your equipment expenses pretty low. The next line item that you want to consider is your props, your wardrobe, and your art department. For your average independent film, you can get a lot of good props and wardrobe just by going to Goodwill or Walmart and getting things used or very cheap. The characters in a lot of independent films are just everyday people, and so you don't need to go out and spend a ton of money getting them big, extraordinary clothes or spending lots of money on set design or construction. There's really no reason to spend more than about $500 in your wardrobe and art department. And a lot of the time, if you're hiring somebody to do hair and makeup as one of your crew members, they'll bring their own stuff, but you want to make sure that you're reimbursing them for their kit, so you want to pay them a day rate like $300 plus a kit fee, which might be around $25 a day, $50 a day. It just depends with the stylist that you're working with. But for our budget here, I'm just going to put in $500 for props and wardrobe. But if you'll have hair and makeup on set, make sure you add in something in the budget for a kit fee. The next thing that you're going to want to be thinking about spending money on is your locations. Now, a lot of locations you can probably get into for free. For example, you might shoot at your own house. You might end up shooting at your uncle's lake house. You might end up shooting at your friend's job. And a lot of these places you're going to end up being able to get for free. But I'm just kind of going to assume that you're not going to be able to get anything for free and that you're going to have to end up paying for your locations. For our budget here, we're just going to assume that you're going to have to shoot for 18 days and you're going to pay $250 a day for your locations altogether. So that's going to end up being about $4,500 for all the locations in your film. Something else you're going to want to consider is travel and accommodations for your cast and crew. Some cast members might be worth flying out from other parts of the country, and in that case, you're going to have to account for how much you're going to spend on plane tickets, on hotels, and that sort of thing. Now, the easiest way to cut down on this expense is to just hire people within an hour of your locations and make sure that your shoot days are short enough that people have time to commute back and forth from wherever they live. At most, you might let 1 or 2 people that you already know live in with you during the production, but paying for hotels and travel just isn't something that makes sense for a lot of independent films. In our sample budget here, I'm going to go ahead and leave this line item off because really, if you're shooting a film at this level, you're going to want to make sure that you just hire local and that people are able to commute back and forth from your set. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is something that you absolutely cannot cut. You might be able to get it done cheaper, but you cannot cut food for your cast and crew. You need to be feeding your cast and crew lunch and dinner if your production days are long enough. Now, you should be able to feed your cast and crew on about $25 a day per person. So that means if you have 4 actors and 3 crew members, including yourself, on set for 18 days, allocating about $25 a day per person for food, you're going to end up spending just over $3,000. Now, in our budget, I'm going to go ahead and allocate $4 grand just to make sure that I'm able to take care of all the people on set. If you're paying your cast and crew, it's just professional and industry normal to buy them all lunch. And if you're not paying your cast and crew and they're just working for a credit or for a good time, then buying them lunch is the absolute least that you can do for people giving up time out of their lives to come and bring your vision to life. The other side of it is I can pretty well guarantee you that you do not want hangry people on your set. You want everybody to be happy and excited to be there, not frustrated and hangry all the time, because if people are frustrated and hangry, your film is not going to turn out as well as it could. So while most other things in your budget can be cut if needed, making sure you have a budget in order to feed to people on your set is an absolute must. Once your film is actually shot, the next thing you've got to get it through is post-production. Now, if you're just an independent filmmaker, chances are you already have a computer that you could be editing on and probably already have some editing skills, which means that you could save a lot of money just by editing it yourself. For the actual editing of your film, I'm just going to budget $0 because I'm going to assume that you're going to be editing it yourself. Now, what is going to be worth spending some money on though is music. More than likely, you can find some local musicians around you to help you out and record some custom music specifically for your film for under $2 grand. And you can probably license some other music from local musicians for a couple $100s a whack. So what you're gonna wanna do is get a couple custom songs written for your piece, or at least just license some music from local musicians so that your film has a really nice score. This is something that can make a big difference in taking your film to the next level and giving it a professional feel. And then the rest of the music, like fill tracks and that kind of stuff to set the tone, you can just stick with stock music sites like Envato or Epidemic Sound. You can use stock music for the whole project, but more often than not, getting at least 1 or 2 or 3 custom songs from local musicians goes a long way in raising the production value of your film. Now, those are all the line items that you're going to want to consider for actually making the film. But what a lot of filmmakers forget that they need to budget for is legal expenses, accounting, and insurance. The last thing that you want to do is get to where you're all the way through production, all the way through post-production, get your entire film made, and then get an offer from a distributor only for that deal not to go through because you didn't have your paperwork in order. You also want to make sure that the end of the year when tax season comes around that you've got all your accounting in order and that you're ready for tax season. So what I generally recommend for filmmakers to do is take their entire production budget up until now and add an extra 10% on top of it to use for legal, accounting, and insurance expenses. So if we add up all of the expenses before this, it comes out to about $45,000. We'll take 10% of that, which is $4,500, and make that our budget for legal expenses, insurance, and accounting. Something else that a lot of filmmakers usually forget to account for when budgeting for their films is P&A, or the actual marketing of the film. There's no point in paying tens of thousands of dollars or more to make a film that no one will actually see because you never put any work in your marketing and letting people know that it even exists. A lot of the time, big budget studio films will end up spending more on their marketing than what it costs to actually make the film. So if it costs $1 million to make the film, they'll spend $2 or $3 million marketing it. When it comes to independent marketing and distribution though, there's a lot that a wise filmmaker can get done for free just using guerrilla marketing strategies. Organic social media is an incredible way to build an audience for your film without having to pump hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into a marketing campaign. When it comes to budgeting for our sample film here, we're going to leave marketing off of our budget. But this is only because you'll be spending your time rather than your money to market the film, so don't think that just because I'm leaving it off the budget, that means you don't need to worry about it. Now, the last line that you're going to want to make sure that you include in your final production budget is a contingency line. Let me tell you how the world works. Everything costs more than you expected it to. One of your locations is going to cost more. One of the actors that you really want to get involved is only going to work for $400 a day, and you're going to have to allocate a little more budget for them. When things like that pop up, and they will pop up, you need some padding in your budget so that the money can actually come from somewhere. So what I recommend doing is adding up all of your expenses and taking an extra 5%, or maybe even 10% if you can, and tacking it on top of that. We had an initial budget of $50,000, and 5% of that is $2,500, which brings your entire grand total of your budget up to about $53,000, which is a really good number for your average independent film where everyone's actually getting paid and the producer is still putting a lot of hustle to pull the thing off. Now, you can do a lot of things like cut everyone's day rate and pay people only $200 a day instead of $300 a day, and if you do something like that and then negotiate and get some of your locations for free, you can make those sorts of budget cuts and then pretty easily get the whole grand total of the budget down to about $30,000 where everybody's still getting paid. And I'd say really that pretty much is about how much money you need to make the average independent film, about $30,000 to $60,000. And really for most independent films, I would strongly recommend that you do not spend more than $100,000 in your film unless you've got some name talent attached to the project. And the reason for that is because if you don't have name talent attached to your project, there's pretty much no way in today's industry that you're going to be able to make your money back that you spent to make the film. If you're super business savvy and you're already experienced in like marketing and distribution, you may be able to pull something off, but you are absolutely going to be the exception to the rule. And I really recommend that unless you have a track record of doing so, you do not spend more than 6 figures making your film. Now, for a lot of US filmmakers though, even coming up with $25,000 or $30,000 to make a film may seem like an insurmountable task. Well, that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't make a film and that filmmaking is just too expensive and you can never be a filmmaker. That's not what you should be taking out of this video at all. At the end of the day, really, you can make a film just by buying people lunch. Pretty much anywhere you live in the world, you can find people who are willing to work on your sets for free just because they want to get experience on film sets and they're trying to get ahead in their career. You can negotiate your locations for free. You can use your own equipment. At the end of the day, the only line item that you absolutely cannot replace is your food. So at the end of the day, What's the absolute least amount of money that you can make a film on? It's about $2,500 to $3,000, and that money is going exclusively to buying everyone on production lunch. So if you set aside about $500 a month for 5 months while you're writing your script, casting your actors, and getting everything else in order to actually make your film, you're gonna end up with the $2,500 you need to make the film. Are you gonna have to hustle for it? Absolutely, and that's just part of the industry. You want to get ahead in this industry, you're gonna have to be willing to put in the hustle for it. But with that said, it's not out of reach. If you put your mind to it, you can absolutely become a real filmmaker making real films. Even if setting aside $500 for your month seems like way more than you're able to do right now, I can assure you that with a little hustle, it's not. We've actually put together a program at Visionary Studios called the 30-Day Filmmaking Kickstart, where we teach you how to kickstart your film career with a short film that makes you money and opens doors in the industry to bring your dream projects to life. So once you go through the program, you should be able to start generating that couple $100 a month in additional income that you'll want to be setting aside to make your film. In the program, while it's certainly not a crash course in how to make a feature film by any stretch, we teach you how to build the sorts of connections that you need to pull off a project like this. We teach you step by step how to find cast and crew willing to work in your productions even if you don't have any budget. We'll show you how to network with other filmmakers to find crew for your films and to help you get onto local productions shooting films near you. Basically, we break down filmmaking into 4 essential things that you need to kickstart your career, and then we show you how you can get all of those 4 things in just 30 days. So if you're just getting into filmmaking and starting your journey, or if you feel stalled out and stuck where you are and you really want to take your filmmaking career to the next level, I'm going to really encourage you to click on the link in the description of this video and check out the 30-Day Filmmaking Kickstart. I can't wait to see you in the program.